Hey guys, this is going to Scare here with another Guardian Tales video. In today's video, I want to talk about the best supports here in Guardian Tales. This is a follow-up from the series I'm doing on talking about the best tanks and also the best healers here in Guardian Tales. And also I do want to do a clarification on what I said in my previous video. It was definitely my fault, and it's based on how I titled the video best tankers in the game when I should have just said best tanks, because there's technically no healer in this game, and so I made a video about healers, which are technically supports, but then I called that one tankers, and I called Noxia a tanker, and she's a tank. Originally I was going to call the video best tanks, and I think she, even though she's like a pseudo tank with her minion that she spawns, she's still in my mind a tank. But since I mislabeled the video, it makes it confusing for people, and I really don't want people to be confused. I know it's a small thing, but I think I just want to clarify that, and so my bad on that. And also I think that's a good segue, because she is technically a support. She is a very good support in this game, one of the best, if not the best, and when it comes to covering multiple game modes here in this game in Noxia. And let's break down her kit here and why she's such a good support for you. Okay, so let's break down her kit, and then I'll explain all the game modes where she's good in. The first thing is Spirit Orb. Launches a spirit to enemy and inflicts ranged damage and restores Dark Spirit's HP by 20%. Dark Spirit is the name of her minion that she spawns, by 20% of the damage inflicted. And then Spirit summons a spirit that follows Noxia. Dark Spirit only appears during battle, and Dark Spirit either inflicts melee damage or taunts enemies nearby. So she has like kind of a split damage there, where the Dark Spirit does melee, she does ranged. And then it has Spirit Joint Attack, where it goes from any status ability into airborne and inflicts 250% DPS range damage to the enemy. So since she's going into, she does range damage and she's inflicting airborne, it actually does 50% more damage on top of that. So 375% range damage. And then when the Dark Spirit is summoned, inflicts 250% DPS extra melee damage. So it's one of the hardest hitting moves potentially in the game from a modifier perspective. But if you look at her base stats, it's not going to hit as hard as other people that have less of a modifier, but since they have higher base, they're going to do more damage. But I think the key thing here is the fact that it's even that high to begin with, and it's an all effect. So you could just pair it with anything. It's very versatile in that case scenario. So then lastly, the special ability here, Soul Manipulation, increases Dark Spirit attack by 40% and restores Noxia's HP by 40% of damage inflicted by Dark Spirit. So this is a massive thing that you're going to absolutely need. A lot of these heroes in this game, you can't really evaluate the character without actually investing fully in, or at least 5-starring the character, because such a big part of her kit is tied to the special ability here. She has a 40% HP boost on for the party. I like these effects. Ideally, I like combat stats, but you do need to have a couple characters in your party that give tank stats for most parts of content in this game. So the 40% HP is very good. And then we can really quickly look at her base stats here. She has 874 base attack, 30,000 HP. And then because of the new levels in this game, let's get an idea how we can actually get a frame of reference here. So if we look at Lynn, that's 1,028 attacks. So you can see that she's not on the high end. If we look at some of the higher attack characters, and let's pull up Beth. 868 for her. And so it's still a very good base attack, but nothing, it's not like she's some of the highest in the game. Like, there's definitely higher ones out there, which would make sense, because if she just got it all like that, that would be pretty ridiculous in my opinion. So where is she used? And for the most part right now, she is top of the meta in Arena, top of the meta in Coliseum. And I think one of the reasons why she's just so good in the Coliseum team is her typing's great. She has that extra effect that she summons is incredibly useful in a Coliseum setting. You really want to have, it really helps making sure your team doesn't get blown out by getting pushed around by the tanks if you only have one tank. So and then she's just the best at doing that versus like an Ogma who doesn't, she has the combination of not only adding extra healing, she has that she's separated, so her minions going in instead of her, so she's going to last longer. She does more damage. She has a better party buff when it comes to Coliseum, and she's inflicting airborne on an all, so she's versus like putting people in a down state like Agma, so just infinitely better from a Coliseum perspective. And how her minion is spawned from a arena perspective here, she is very annoying to deal with, especially based on the map. So right now we're going to be facing this map here, so she can't really kite around, and whereas the previous map there's all these little pillars and stuff like that, in combination with her spirit that is causing your auto attack to potentially go on to that instead of her. So like this kind of map I don't think really suits her that well. This is going to be a map for Beth's, Future Princess, Lynn, that can really corral people, and if you're forced to fight them, they're going to win that 1v1. Whereas this map might not necessarily be the best for her, even though she's still, even in these situations, she's still very good. Whereas certain like range characters just get completely blown out if they're not on the right map. Okay, and then she's amazing in Orbital Lift and also in Camazone. Because you can really cheese a lot of it. First of all, just having tanks in these game modes is just really important because the damage is just so high. If you really want to push some of the harder content in this, you're really going to need to have a whole bunch of options, because in the harder versions of this, they're going to ban certain types. So I haven't even played one, so I can't show it. But in, on stage 6, like potentially they'll ban Future Princess or something like that. So having more options as a tank versus just only having light or only having dark characters, and like Agma is going to be really useful for you. And then lastly, I would say the only part of the game that she's really not useful is going to be in the raids here. So that's really it. When it comes to a character, you can't really ask for more. For what she does, she provides it really well. She's a very unique character in the sense she's the only one that has a spirit that she can summon. I just think she's going to be a fantastic character for a very long time. And even if potentially there's a better character out that replaces her, having her fully invested in, I mean, it's probably not going to be so much better to where you're just going to completely fall off a cliff. Like, you could just have this character invested in you. Yes, it might not be the absolute top of the meta character, but she's still very good. And if you're trying to be competitive in Master Arena, what's nice about the bans is that you could just ban out characters that, if there's a potential matchup that's really tough for you, you can just ban those out. So I think they're giving us a lot of options to where even if you're not always on the cutting edge, you still have ways around falling out, potentially not being the top of the meta anymore. Okay, so the next support I want to talk about is Gabriel. And she's kind of on the level of Noxia when it comes to just how useful she is in so many different game modes. But let's break down her kit and then I'll talk about where she's good in. So Gabriel here, we have normal attack, flicks bow and shoots out a sound wave, reduces light type resistance by 20% for 3 seconds for each enemy hit by the last attack. As we'll see with her exclusive weapon, you really want to have the exclusive weapon for her, because instead of reduces light time resistance on the last attack, it's going to be every attack. So having that is just an infinite, it's just so much better that it's really no question why you would want the EX weapon for her. Then she has the Summons Holy Sanctuary, puts enemies in a down state here as her weapon skill. Chain skill is strikes Holy Lightning to inflict 300% DPS, restores allies HP by 30% of heal, and removes all negative effects. As we're going to see, she's more of a damage character with slight supporting tendencies versus a pure support character. And then lastly, on Sound of Heaven's hit, restores HP of party members with lowest HP by 30% of heal, and increases attack by 30% for 5 seconds, activates once every 5 seconds. So this is an amazing special ability that's really going to boost it. Not only does she do a lot of damage, but she boosts everyone else's damage and makes it to she's a really awesome character. Just like Noxia, she has she can proc off anything and then put them in an injured state. Ideally, she would knock them up into, airborne to benefit her own damage, but I think that'd be pretty busted if you had all these all status effect characters and you keep popping up into airborne. Would be pretty nuts. Still amazing character. She's also very good in arena, and the interesting about her is she's based on how she's piloted, she's a massively different character. When she is a leader of your team, she has very high healing based on her EX weapon here, which is on Sound Heaven hit, inflicts 30% damage every 2 seconds. So she's adding significantly more damage per auto attack, and then immediately reduces lifetime resistance, like I was saying earlier, and then restores allies HP in the Sanctuary by 100% of heal. So this is the only way you can actually really get her to be a healer. I think a lot of people, when she first came out, thought she'd be a healer kind of in the same vein as Maya, but when she's not being piloted, she doesn't even come close to the level of healing. I think even Future Princess does more healing than her. But when she's piloted as a main character, then I think she does a lot of good healing for your team, as long as you could kind of keep them close to the Sanctuary that comes out and does a lot of healing there. So she's definitely two very different characters on how you want to play her. I think she's really going to be a competitive character in Arena for a while. Also in Coliseum, she's one of the best characters you could have as a back row character for your team there. She's amazing in raids. as we can see here in Coliseum. She's going to be in a lot of teams here. I think she's potentially getting replaced by Bianca because same party skill, but a little different, which is surprising to me, but maybe how the stats work out, she's actually better. But when I used Bianca, I absolutely hated how her AI worked completely. But I would love to see how this team actually works here. But it's just the AI was so frustrating using Bianca. So that's why I ended up hero resetting her. But it's cool to see her in the meta. It is kind of a bummer because also she just didn't seem that great in raids. Like there would be natural 2-stars that would do more damage than her, even in a Garum team. So it's cool to see her back, especially if people really invested in her, that she's back in the meta. It's one of those things that, you know, to people's points on not using hero reset stones, this might be an example of that, where is a character that fell out of the meta for a few months now and is now right back as one of the premier characters in the game. So definitely be very careful on who you hero reset. And then, but as you can see, she's pretty much everywhere up here. She's awesome. Very good Coliseum character, very good arena character, especially if you're pushing up Master Arena. She might not be the best in when you can choose any 3 characters, but once you start introducing a band phase in there, I think she could be used quite a bit. And then she's amazing in Orbital Lift. She's amazing in Gamma Zone. And then lastly, she's also amazing in raids. She's one of the few characters in the game that can be used literally everywhere in the game, and not only be used everywhere, but excel in every part of the game. So just a really good character. Highly recommend if you have her pulled to go for her. Can't really go wrong with Gabriel here. Queen Idol Eva. And I think she is an amazing support for this game, especially if you're kind of skewing towards more of a basic style team. And let's break down her kit here. So her auto attack is releases sound waves with adorable performances. So it's just pretty basic, just nothing special on the basic, but potentially could be with her special or with her EX. And then her weapon skill here pours down kaleidoscopic lights, puts enemies in airborne state. What I've noticed about this weapon skill is it's actually very big. So sometimes people will cheese orbital lift, like really hard orbital lift zones, because they have this to actually, this is one of the few things that can like reach and hit everyone, and then the typing works out, stuff like that. So it's kind of a useful thing, but most of the time she's going to be in the support slot for your team. Then chain skill sings a song that inflicts 240% DPS damage around the target and increases allies attack by 30% for 5 seconds, very similar to Gabriel's. But I like that it's on the chain skill. Well, preferably, like I like Gabriel's because it's just purely a special ability on a 5-second cooldown versus the chain skill, which is going to be significantly longer. Another example of a character that has the all chain skill into downed, which would be best with, you know, melee characters. Ideally, this would be airborne because a lot of the basic characters are all ranged characters. You got Nari, you got Future Knight. It definitely would make them significantly better, but based on potentially the other people's chains, maybe they kind of need it that way for the chains to actually work out. And then lastly, we have the special ability Cheerleader. When using Soundwave skill, restores the most depleted party members' HP by 5%, increases their defense by 30% for 5 seconds. This is really good because it literally makes her auto attack. Every 5 seconds, she's going to be giving 5% HP and 30% defense, and putting her into harder PvE content, you really tell the difference. It's hard to really quantify it when you're watching it, but you can just feel it. If you don't have her in the lineup and you do have her in the lineup, you're going to feel like you're getting a decent amount of healing, and that 30% defense really comes up clutch. And then she's doing the 50% basic attack buff for your party. Very good. You know, obviously, if you have like Future Knight, Nari, stuff like that in your lineup. So I think a very good support character. She used to be pretty meta when it came to Coliseum. I think potentially even right now you're seeing, I think, the introduction of these support style dark characters kind of really prevents her from really shining, even though a lot of the meta is dominated by light characters. It's just nowadays how the top team works is it's just so non-type dependent that you can't really counter this meta with basic characters too much. I think you'll have a lot of success if you really go into like full-on basic characters. It's better to just have those characters leveled up and ready to go, and then pivoting to another thing to try to min-max. It's just not worth it. Just have the best basic team that you're farming possible, and you're gonna have a lot of success with it, because I think the basic team is still very good. It's just because it's not at the top doesn't mean it's not worth investing in. And then from an arena perspective, I haven't seen her too much. I think some people kind of meme with it, but how Master Arena is working is the ban phase is you could pivot into like an all like mono team. I've been seeing like a lot of the wins and losses, and people will pivot like to an all earth team or an all dark team, and I can see, or like an all light team I think is more popular, but I can see this being actually kind of a funny counter. Like you see someone like you can maybe ban 2 things and leave up Future Princess, and you count, and then you as a bait they pick Future Princess, and then you just pick a whole bunch of basic characters, and then now you because now you just smoke them because it's all light versus basic or something like that. I think that could be a fun strategy, and I think that's one of the coolest things about Master Arena is seeing how these mono teams can kind of become meta because of how you won the pick and ban phase. It just reminds me of like League, where it's like, oh, they won and pick ban. Like it's like big brain stuff that I think is really cool, and so potentially having options like this would really allow that kind of cheese to happen. She's used essentially everywhere except Arena, Camazone, Orbital Lift, and Raids. For the basic team, she's one of the best characters for that. Cool thing about her too is that, yes, she does damage, but you get a lot of her benefits from just having her 5-star. And yes, you can max limit break her, but I don't think she's worth it. She's kind of on the same level as like Veronica, where I just want to keep her up here. Like from a resource management perspective, you could get a lot more benefit from just maxing out your main DPS. If you really want to go all in on the basic team, by all means, max limit breaking her is still good. But if you're having a wide roster, or if you're really struggling on getting as many of these hero crystals as possible, potentially not fully max limit breaking her might be the way to go, and then just save the resources for other characters. So it's kind of a cool thing. There's not many characters in this game that you can actually get by, and they're still very useful without max limit breaking them. So that's one of the benefits of these support characters here. Next, we got Veronica. I mentioned her just a second ago. I think she's a very good support, but she's very niche, but she's also very good. And also technically Mayreal is support. She's, in my opinion, she's not. She's a DPS. She'll be in the DPS thing. So I just want to make that clear right here. Like Mayreal is a good character, but she's not a support, you know, even though the game says she is. Okay, so Veronica, so far, she is a very niche character, but I think she's a very good support. And also she's very low econ. I ended up getting her to 5-star, but I noticed that she's still very good even at 4-star. If you're just willing to invest the Awakening Stones on her, I still think she was very good and useful for me in the raid, specifically when she was 4-star. So let's go over her kit really quick, and then I'll talk about where potentially she could be used. And as you can see here, I'm using her with a fire weapon. She's very versatile in which weapons you can use her on. She's like one of the best, like most splashable raid characters in the entire game. I just want to highlight her, even though I think for most people, she's like 90% of people, she's probably not even worth investing in my opinion. Because, but if you can invest in her and you want to try to min-max what you got, you could probably throw her at 4 stars, get her up, and she's going to work for you. Like she's going to be very useful. And then maybe down the line, like way down the line, you can actually invest in her. I think I was when she came out, I had a lot of stuff already, and I was able to actually use her because I just kept seeing over and over that she was in all the highest damage dealing teams for rating she was used in. So let's talk about why that is. Okay, so she has 2 moves here. Releases Holy Power to inflict damage to mid-range enemies, and then Blessing of the Chosen One increases nearby allies' critical hit multiplier by 100% for 4 seconds. So already right there, you can kind of see why she's doing a ton of damage. It's actually a really small range. It's like a little tiny range there. So you got to really keep in mind your positioning when using her on your team. And then she has the weapon skill, damages and imprints a lightning shape on enemies around the target with holy power. The lightning explodes after some time to inflict damage and puts them in an airborne state. Not going to really use that too much unless you're trying to cheese Camazone with the I'll talk about that here in a bit. Okay, and then we got chain skill, all into downed, inflicts 180% DPS on target with the holy light, and increases the entire ally's critical hit chance and attack by 30% for 5 seconds. So this is better than the last 2 we've seen from the supports. It's kind of they keep a lot of standard effects based on whatever category you're in, and we saw a whole bunch of increased attack or increased defense by 30% for 5 seconds. Now we're seeing critical hit chance and attack by 30% for 5 seconds, and we're getting a increased critical hit multiplier by 100%. So not only is she doubling your critical hit damage, she's increasing your critical hit chance and attack by 30%. So she's hitting all of it. She increases the damage of the rest of your team massively with all of these extra benefits. Then lastly, increases damage and decreases damage taken by 50% of the increased weapon skill regen speed. So this is the cheese people are doing in Camazone, where you could just stack a whole bunch of things that increases her weapon skill regen speed up, and then it makes her essentially unkillable once you get to a certain point. And that's why they nerfed it heavily. Apparently you can kind of get away with it here. Plus, if you have like a really high, one of the rare merch, like 5-star or 4-star, you put that on her, plus a whole bunch of stuff in Camazone, you can probably cheese it, and she's going to become like a god that can't die, really. And you can use her to like clear content. That will probably be for another video if it's actually still possible. And then so she's increasing skill attack by 80% here. For the most part, she's really, I think this kind of character has a lot of potential going forward in the game, just being able to increase the, for the most part, she's purely just a raid character, but I still want to highlight her because she's so good at that role. She's splashed in so many teams when it comes to raiding. She's a character to keep your eye out on as someone that's going to last a very long time, because as characters come and go, she'll probably stay as the battery that allows them to pop off. It is kind of how I see her going forward. She might not be used for most people. She's not an arena character. She's not a Coliseum character. So for the most part, that just excludes, you know, ever really investing into her. But I think for accounts, you can probably sneak her in as a, you know, 4-star character that's going to be useful for raiding and also useful for potential parts of Camazone for you. But for the most part, just a solid raid character that I think is going to be good for a very long time is really all I'm trying to say. It's just, even though she doesn't clear that many parts of content, I think she's still a very good support. All the other characters definitely get used significantly more in other parts of content, but for what she does it really well, and I think it's worth highlighting. So that's going to call it for my best supports here in Guardian Tales. Let me know in the comments below if there's any I missed, or if there's any questions you got specifically to this video. And with that, guys, I'm out. Peace.